started. We'll be recording and all. We're kind of trickling in at this point. We can start with some intros or reminders if you have any.
Great. Thank you so much. First, I wanted to thank our panelists, Dimitri Simmons and Lydia Seitz, for joining us, as well as the students and staff from both Code Louisville, Code Kentucky, and our community supporters. We appreciate everyone being here. And as Shannon said, we will be recording in case you're not able to watch live. So thank you so much, both Dimitri and Lydia. Lydia, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I've been in IT either on the business side and then on, hands-on and then back to the business side. I kind of ricochet in between the two since about 2003. As I pointed out here on the bio, I've done nonprofit, for-profit, contract work as well. At Knowledge Works, which is where I met Monica, and then P&G. I'm actually back on the P&G program, but at CBTS as a vendor, Genesis Financial, and then Mercy Health. So a pretty wide array of background and experience, and then and in different industries. So excited to be here and hear what everybody is doing and looking to do.
Great. Thank you so much for making time to join us. And Dimitri, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Dimitri Simmons. I've been in IT for about 7 months now. So I'm fairly new to the field. Prior to this, I was in the Army for 6 years. And after that, I did some intelligence contracting work overseas. And then during COVID, I decided I want to make a change in my life, and I've idolized the kind of lifestyle that you can live working in tech. And that's when I decided to make the change. And I've been mentoring for my second cohort with Code Kentucky now. I mentored previously for Python, and now I'm working in Intro to Web Development Part 1.
Thank you so much for sharing. Wanted to start by going a little bit deeper into job seeking and the job search process. Have you, and this is a question for both of you, let's start with Dimitri. Have you worked as a contractor, or have you just worked as a straight employee? And what can you tell us about that experience or the difference in those experiences?
So I worked on both sectors. So I worked for the IRS, and then I worked privately as a intelligence contractor, and I worked for a public entity. So they have, they vary quite a bit. In general, if we're talking straight up, private tends to pay more, and then, public, you have more benefits and such. And there's different cultures in both. So it's something that people like different things. So I've enjoyed both. I've enjoyed both my private work and my public work. I work public now, and I enjoy it very much. Then I'm sorry, Monica, can you kind of read? I don't want to leave off a piece of the answer. Can you repeat what your question was?
That's quite all right. I just want to know if you had any opinion on the differences between freelance work or work as a straight employee.
Okay. I kind of misread, which took your contractor word. So freelancing, I haven't done any freelance work in my IT field. It's something I think a lot of developers strive for, and that's really what I would say the ultimate goal for most people is, because you have that financial freedom that a lot of people get into IT for. Especially as a web developer, you can easily make websites, set your own hours, be your own boss. And I think that is a good goal for someone, especially younger people, maybe those who have retired, to get into. And then if you like seeing people every day, you like the interactions, like I'm working at now, I really, I like both ends. I enjoy time to myself, and I enjoy, interacting with people. So it all depends on preference.
Thank you for sharing. Lydia, can you tell us a little bit about what it's been like to work both as a freelance and as an hourly/salaried employee?
Yes. So I've done both. I've been, an actual salaried FTE for about the past 4 years. I did contracting work as a W-2 contractor, not a freelance, which makes it a little bit easier because you're working with, a recruiter that's helping you. Their job is help you find a job. You don't make money, they're not making money. So that's kind of cool. I did some freelance stuff here and there. It's hard to find time, for me at least, with a 9 to 5 plus that. I will say, as a contractor, I moved very quickly. I was able to go, you keep your resume very up to date. My previous job, I had been there 14 years and it was horrible having to update my resume. I will never do that again. And then but every 6 months you kind of have a process. And I think I connect to work very differently now than I did at my previous job. It's work, and I think everybody should have that family job at some point, but I've already had that. So I'm like, well, now it's just, what is this doing? It makes you very conscientious of what's going on. Be aware, though, as a contractor, that, some companies are kind of skittish about it. Some people, unfortunately, have come through and gone, oh, well, this is implied employment. I personally don't believe in implied employment. I believe that whatever name is on my W-2 and my paycheck is who employs me. So just understand, if you go in as a W-2 contractor, what is their retention policy? Is there a certain amount of time that you need to leave by? Some places it's 6 months, some places a year, because you've got that implied, employment. And so you have to be careful of that. But I needed a little bit more stability with some family stuff going on. I've got older people in my life, but yeah, I would go back to it in a heartbeat. I loved it. So at first I didn't, but then I really liked it.
Staying with Lydia here for a moment, can you tell us about a point in time in your career that things have changed direction, either voluntarily, involuntarily? Where was that pivotal moment and how did that occur?
Actually going into IT project management. So I did desktop support. I'm kind of flaky. So anyway, so I started off as the admin for the IT guy at KnowledgeWorks and was like, well, this is kind of cool. So then I went back to school for that and took, Cisco networking and all of this stuff and did some systems administration. It was a small environment, so you touch everything. About 10, 12 years at that, I was like, what's the next step? So then I started looking into kind of project lead work, and then I went into project management. And it's a hard sell sometimes, just because people view it as two different skill sets, and it is, but you just start kind of developing and then transitioning as you go along. So yeah, so both voluntary. I would say, to be honest, the contracting was not as voluntary, but that is how it is in IT. A lot of times you do wind up contract or attempt to hire. And then, you have to be willing to be flexible around that. It seems to be the standard. Did I cover it?
That's a great answer. Thank you so much. Dimitri, can you tell us what is the most challenging part of your current position, and what sort of resources do you use to help you navigate through any issues or problems you come up? How much time do you really spend Googling?
Yes. So as far as to answer your first question, difficult things I've dealt with have been, I kind of assumed the role. Someone left a few months before me, and the handoff was not great. So I'm learning a new IT role as well as assuming projects. So I have to kind of take a lot of initiative and ask questions and work with different departments to piece together what I'm doing, figure out how to do it, what I'm doing. And that could be difficult. But at the same time, you do learn a lot that way. And it really helps you for the future. It gets you connections, you integrate better into the company by putting your name out there and, trying your best to help people. Googling quite a bit. I would say that's what any coder, even senior developers do, is they Google quite a bit. Luckily for me, we use a specific software called Laserfish, which is for business informatics, and they have their own little type of Stack Overflow answer form, so that helps quite a bit in determining answers to Laserfish related questions. Then, of course, I have a really good team that I'm the newest guy, and everyone else has been there 5+ years. So it's really good to look up to those senior guys and get information from them.
Can you tell us a little bit about the role that your portfolio, your resume, or your social media played in achieving your current position?
Yeah. So there's a lot of, I guess you can answer that question in many different ways. So for me personally, I did a complete 180. I came from a senior intelligence analyst, and now I was applying for a junior, software developer. So, the best thing to do is to really target your resume. I couldn't do that because I didn't have very relevant experience. So I kind of took the opposite approach and did more of a portfolio approach in which I displayed everything I've done in the past. Anything that I thought could help me, is not mainly IT, but more to show my potential and what I could do. So I would say it definitely does help. I'm actually in college right now, and I'm in a business class, and we just talked about career portfolios yesterday. So it really opened my eyes and the and how much a portfolio showing your work, like especially as a software developer or web developer, you want to be able to have stuff to display on GitHub and to show the current employees saying, "Hey, I'm new to tech, but this is what I've done so far," to really display your potential.
Thank you. And over to Lydia. Lydia, what do you think that the role of the resume and social media, specifically LinkedIn, is in achieving the position that people are trying to find? And has it helped you?
Yeah, it has. So I would say the main thing is just, it's very true. It's who you know, right? So network, network, network. When I worked on my resume, I frankly was not getting anywhere with it. I just wasn't. And I would talk to recruiters and they're like, and at one point, one of them, I don't know why this clicked with me. He goes, "I'm sorry, but," and like, this is my resume, right? He goes, "I just don't see it." And I thought, it's my resume. My resume is the problem. So I went to, at the time, Jewish Vocational Services out in Blue Ash, and they had resume writing. And it wasn't a total outsource of my resume, right? But it was, hey, here's all the things that I've done. And then they help you put it together because, this or that or has a term for it, right? That a recruiter is looking for that you may or may not know. The difference in what I had put together and what they had put together for me, total 180, on what I've done. And then, LinkedIn is an excellent way of keeping in contact with folks and reaching out and saying, "Hey, I might be looking," especially when I was contracting, I gave myself about 8 weeks to find a job because I don't work. It's just me and the dog. So if I don't work, nobody's bringing money in because the dog refuses to get a job. So I would do that. I would give it about 8 weeks and start pinging people that I knew. But I would say on the job networking is huge. And right now where I'm working is because I went, I kid you not, to a networking event, met a recruiter there. Recruiter placed me at P&G the first time. I networked with the folks there, stayed in contact there via LinkedIn, came back when I had to leave again because of, they have rules around that. That guy, one of the senior directors there, introduced me to the recruiter that has eventually hired me on at CBTS. So, I mean, it's a total ripple effect, and I just never underestimate staying in contact. And one of my mentors said, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So I would say it's been huge for me.
I'm glad that you mentioned mentors. Can you talk a little bit about who has mentored you, what that process has been like, and how important do you think it is to have mentors?
It's huge. And it's huge if it's people that you know and that I've been very fortunate that I've had my first IT manager. So when I decided I wanted to go back for tech, I could barely do PowerPoint. I mean, I just thought it was interesting and I kind of fooled around with it. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And that was literally I mean, I did research if I could make some money at it, don't get me wrong. But from there, it was, let's figure it out. And so I still lean on him. I mean, I've had to manage people and he's someone who I trust. And I always felt like he treated his people well. And I'm like, sometimes there's tough management is not always cute. So sometimes there's tough decisions you have to make. There's people you have to help move them along because this is not the best fit for them, it seems. And I lean on him quite a bit. And I've had a lot of fortunate, things along those lines. And then other things is just, like I said, networking. I see something, it may be related to what I do for a living, maybe soft skills, which I like to call career skills. They're not really just soft skills. I'll just go check it out. And I've met mentors that way as well. So nothing super formal, just the networking has been the biggest deal for me.
Thank you so much. Dimitri, can you share a little bit about your experience with mentors?
Yes. Okay. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. My computer's being weird. So with mentors, I'm at my first IT tech position. So I work from the Army, I come from an intelligence and GIS background. My IT department is IT and GIS. So I kind of have mentors on both sides. Mentors from my old, I guess, career field, and then mentors for my new IT career field. So very helpful, especially as someone who's brand new to it. Like I said before, they've been at my company for 5 years, and then they all have master's degrees and have like 10 years plus experience. So it's really eye-opening to see their perspectives on things and kind of get a little cheat sheet on how to do things so you're not struggling to do them from start. On the GIS side, my goal is to get back into GIS, but as a GIS programmer. So having them is very helpful because I did GIS, but it was all tailored towards military. So to look at it from a civilian point of view is very helpful because it lets me see what they all have some professional certificates that are very helpful to have in the GIS world. So it allows me to see what skills are needed, what people are looking for, and then also how I can tie in together what I'm doing now to what I'm planning on doing. And then my director is, the director of GIS and the IT side. So it's a very good thing to have for sure. And it's definitely not something to take for granted.
Can you tell us a little bit about your educational background and how you came to GIS work, and what skills would you like to develop in the future?
Yeah. So with GIS, I've always been I never heard of GIS, for the first 18 years of my life, but I've always been into maps and stuff like that and traveling. When I went to sign up for the Army, I saw a job that was, dealt with maps and intelligence, and I used to watch all those, spy movies and stuff. So it seemed like a good little fit. And I did that for 6 years. I went to school for IT initially, and I didn't, it's hard coming out of the Army too, especially going to school as an adult, it's not fun. So I did it for a year, and then I withdrew, and then I ended up contracting some more for the government. And then I decided to go back to school. And I finished when do I finish? December. And I kind of decided I got this job before I went back to school. And it kind of opened my eyes because when I was in school, majoring in web and mobile development, it's a different kind of learning curve than trying to learn on your own. I wasn't that interested. It wasn't until I did the boot camp and then I kind of forced myself to learn things in my free time, which gave me more interest in remaining in tech. which is why I did the boot camp, because I was not a fan of what I was doing in college. And then as far as my GIS experience, and this is another thing that I think people should keep in mind, is that when you have, for me, I find it's better to, like, I enjoy GIS, and GIS jobs, IT and programming pay way better than GIS. GIS is a very underpaid field. But as a GIS programmer, they make significantly higher salaries. So I think it's great if you have a background that you can kind of incorporate programming into. That way you're showing recruiters that you're not starting all over, that you have experience in this background, but you just have newer skills that will help you for the new career fields you're applying for.
What was your experience working with recruiters?
Good and bad. My favorite kind of recruiter is when the how do you say it? When my team members are recruiting. When my first point of contact, like for my current position, my director was the first one who reached out to me. I had my first interview was with my director and then my immediate supervisor. My second interview was with those two and then HR. So that was great. And same thing with my contracting job. It was people who done the job, so I know exactly what to expect. When I've had a negative experience I've had is anytime I've had interviews or I spoke with people who weren't doing the job. They were just HR and they never touched the job. It's always been some kind of inconsistency. I didn't like it. Like, for example, I'll give you two examples. One, I talked to a recruiter. They asked how much money I wanted, told him. He offered me about 30% lower than that. And then when I denied the job, the guy who would have been my director at the time, he was like, why? I'm like, well, I told you, I told her this and you offered me this. And he was completely unaware of it, which is, not great. And then another thing is when I was contracting overseas, I asked the recruiter about a living situation. And he said, we didn't have any roommates. I get there and it's 8 people to a room off the bat. So I left that job in a week. Like, I flew all the way to Kuwait and I left that job in a week. So they didn't look great on my resume, but that's kind of what happens when you deal with recruiters and you never get to speak to the actual people you'll be working with, at least from my experience.
I bet that was an incredibly interesting experience to show up and have 8 unexpected roommates.
Yes.
Lydia, can you tell us a little bit about your educational background, your experience with recruiters, and if you've ever had a job where you found out you were going to have 8 roommates unexpectedly?
One roommate and I'm out. I'm definitely not about the roommate life. Yeah, so I actually went to school for accounting. That's what my associates is in. And my best friend growing up, her brother would build computers, and we're teenage girls, and we're like, oh my God, you're such a dork. So he thinks it's hilarious that this is what I do now, but he would go to CompUSA every, week, and him and his dad would build out stuff. And I think like a lot of people in IT in my generation, I really did just fall into it. I was looking to do something more technical. I didn't know what. And I wound up, like I said, being the administrative assistant for the IT guy. And he just happened to be all about me getting in there and helping with stuff. And I paid my way with cell phones, which I'm still in love with, and printers, which, like most IT people, I absolutely hate. Yes, CompUSA, I'm old. So there was that. And then I went back to school, and my bachelor's is in network. It's a technical management with a focus on networking. So I went to DeVry. So I'm super excited to see programs like this pop up, because when I've been back to college, if you didn't know what you wanted to be when you were 18, they didn't have anything really for adults that were working. I have had recruiters that have tried to tell me, like, I had to take a pay cut when I first got into full-time project management. And then I did my year of that. And I was like, okay, I should go back up now. And sometimes you have to tell a recruiter, like, we can offer this. I'm like, No. See, I make this and you're not offering what I can't take that. So, you know, if you do wind up contracting, I will say as a W-2 contractor, no less than 5. I'm dead serious. 5 recruiters at all times. And you just turn on your bat light and you say, hey, I'm looking for a job, and may the best one win. So I've done that before. The other thing for me is if a recruiter has a really nice fancy office and they're going on fancy business trips all the time, I'm happy for them. And I do not hate the player. But you know what that's called? Overhead. Do you know who's paying for that? You. So I like a recruiter that's in a little plain office and does a few little extra stuff, and that's about it. But you know, yeah, that's sort of, I've had good experiences, but you gotta go through a few frogs. And of course, there's the whole, you have the job, but now we don't have the financing for it anymore. That happens a lot, and you're seeing a lot more of that with this, you know, workforce shortage, which I'm not going to get started on here because it's not the place. But you do see on LinkedIn, people are talking more about sometimes how interviewing companies are treating people that are applying, you know, and they're doing that. Oh, you've got the job. So I don't have the job until I have paperwork. So until I have that, then that's when I have the job. I keep looking. So you have to have your own process as well.
I know it's been a challenging couple of years employment-wise for everyone across the board between COVID and this realigning of the workforce. What can you share with us about how the working environment has changed? Like what are the biggest things that you've seen between, you know, 2020 and now that impact how you do your work moving forward? What expectations are, like how is your success measured, that sort of thing?
So being in hardware, it is almost unheard of to have a totally virtual team. I've got a guy who is in Texas, two in Texas, one in Georgia. That is not typical when I got into this. The other thing is, so I did work actually on-prem. I was one of the few people that was working on-prem for a rack and stack project that I was leading downtown Cincinnati. And it was the weirdest thing. I've worked almost all my career downtown Cincinnati. You didn't even have, I mean, I did because safety first, but you didn't even have to look across the street to cross the street. There was no one down there, no one. It was so bizarre. So I would say now, you know, my next job that I got after that, I worked for someone based out of Oregon, Portland, Oregon, which wouldn't have been something I would have, you know, thought of. Or I work full time from home now, which is also in hardware. You really didn't get that as often in networking. So that's the biggest change I've seen. And you don't see faces. So I think these are the first faces I've seen all day today for a work related thing. Because everybody's in their PJs.
Demetric, can you tell us a little bit about what your experience has been over the last couple of years through the pandemic, through the alignment, and the sort of changes you've seen?
Yes. So my last full-time job before this, I finished in November 2019. I just finished Afghanistan, so I was chilling and all that stuff. I was just looking to get into work. But one thing I've noticed is coming from a field to where you need security clearances, is how many of those jobs went remote. And I still don't understand how. I don't know how you can access top secret stuff and from remote. It doesn't make any sense. But it's interesting, like Lydia said, how jobs that you wouldn't imagine to be remote at all, just all of a sudden remote. I know I was hearing stories from my company that I work at now saying that they were having lunch remote. Like they would turn on the Zoom cameras during lunchtime and eat and talk and stuff I wouldn't do if I was working remote. But I think another thing is that I like is that a lot of jobs like IT, you don't need to be in person, more for hardware, but for like development, you definitely don't. So it kind of really shows a lot of companies how I guess, how do I want to word this? Alternative working conditions. I think a lot of people they don't trust, because there are times, Steve, that I've experienced to work remote, but they'll be in Target during the training, so you have those bad apples, but you've also seen that the majority of people can completely work remote and get their job done. And also companies are seeing it and they're saving money too. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody at this point.
I would like to ask what your experience has been in IT as a person of color. I'm very pleased that we have both a person of color and a woman on our panel. That's not something that we always get in the IT industry. So I'd be interested to hear what your perspective has been.
So I'd say, much newer to IT than Lydia. So I don't have too much to say. I haven't experienced any, at least in my work environment, I haven't experienced any issues. Like I'm moderate, but if I had to pick one, I lean Democrat, and my company is overwhelmingly Republican, but we're very cordial. We can have political conversations without, anyone getting angry and stuff. So I personally haven't had any negative experiences at this point.
Has impacted things.
For me?
Yep, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. I would say probably more. I've seen some ladies in here. What's up, ladies? It's been hard. Networking is not, I would say it's rough. I was fortunate again. I've been very fortunate. I cannot highlight that enough with my initial boss. But the networking class I took, it was me and a bunch of dudes, a bunch of white guys actually. We had the very first class. It was on a Saturday. I'll never forget. It was me and one other girl, and I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm so excited. And by the time of the first break, she was like, "Nope." She got up, she packed up and left. I never saw her again. I'm like, "Where'd she go?" So, it makes it hard. I will say it's more as a woman than racially, because men and women do communicate differently. They just do. And so that made it kind of tough at times. Networking, I don't know if it's like this on software. Software strikes me as more collaborative. Networking is a little bit more boys with their toys, honestly, and keeping secrets and not telling you stuff and poking you, and not verbally, But my manager, I was like, "Hey, you have to be able to stand up for yourself." And I'm like, "I'm not okay with this." And he's like, I said, "I don't think they're doing it to be mean, but all that said and done, I'm still in contact with those guys. I'm still cool with them. I would say don't just be, if you are a BIPOC woman or are a POC at all in IT, it's changing. The awareness around it has changed as well, because there were years where I was pretty certain I said something and no one responded. And then the guy sitting next to me, I kid you not, would say the same thing, the exact same thing. And someone would go, "That's an awesome idea." And I'm like, "Is it though?" Because I feel like I already said that. So you get that a lot. And for better or worse, with different Me Too things, and there's things around that. But what it did bring out was that it wasn't just me, because I'm like, maybe it's me. Maybe it's just me that's not saying things. It's like, no, this happens. And I think it's a good thing, because now people are aware of it. And I feel like people are noticing that you're getting more people in the workforce that are diverse. You need the people that are supporting those individuals to be able to put themselves in their place as well. So I would just say don't discredit someone just because they don't look like you. But I would also say that for my POC people, I think some of the people that have had the biggest impact on my career have been men, and several of them have been white men. I mean, the boss I referred to earlier, definitely a white guy, so let people prove themselves for who they are. And it's hard because you come in with your own experiences, but just give them a little bandwidth to see what they do and, see what happens. I found some good people that way.
Given the way that technology is going and all of the opportunities that have come about in the last 10, 15 years, if you had the opportunity to restart your career now, what would you choose? Would you make the same choices or different choices?
Automation. I would do automation.
Why?
I like to make things do stuff. It's like a weird puppet master feeling. But I also know that in small, again, I've worked in very small places. And so what you can do, I actually have a networking automation book here now that I need to read, because there's just so much work to do, even with cloud administration and things of that sort, that if you can make things do things more efficiently, which I have a really big pet peeve about inefficient things. So this is all so me, that if you could just get it to move for you, there's just so much more you can do, and you can get into more rewarding work. Otherwise, you're stuck in kind of this sort of got to make the donuts round of stuff. Whereas if you can automate that, it makes it better and gives you more growth opportunity, I think.
And Dimitri, if you had the opportunity to start your career over again, would you choose the same path or would you make different choices?
I think I stay mostly the same. I like development. I started in Python and web development, and like Lydia said, Python you can use for a lot of automation. They have a book even called "Automating the Boring Stuff with Python," which teaches you how to kind of not have to do super repetitive tasks. But I enjoy it so far. I don't. The only thing that I might do differently as far as what I'm doing now is I kind of jumped. They talk about it a bit. It's called Imposter Syndrome. You finish the boot camp, you're like, am I good enough for this? Am I good enough for that? So I kind of jumped on the first job that gave me an interview and the first that gave me an offer. Which I love my job. But of course, depending on what you're looking at, now I know I could go, like I work in Kentucky, I know I could go to Cincinnati and make double the money. But I'm kind of, sticking it out because I think it's good to kind of build your resume and not since I was doing contracting before, I kind of look like a job hopper. So I'm trying to have some stability on my resume for now, and especially while I'm doing school. But for the most part, I really like it. I like how I started with, and I think another thing too is, let me finish my sentence first. I like how I started with JavaScript and web development. I really enjoy those. I don't have any regrets about that. I think one thing is to really, like when I went to college, I started with Java and I did not like Java at all. And that kind of, and discrete mathematics and those things kind of made me not want to be, it dissuaded me to be in the tech field because I didn't know any better at that point. But one thing I say now is regarding coding languages, there's something for everybody. It really depends on what you want to do. I like Python way more than I like JavaScript. Not JavaScript, Java. So I would want a job to where I am coding in Python. Whereas some people, they chase the money by seeing a C++ job, but I would hate to have to work with C++ personally. So I think it's really tailoring your interest to code instead of just chasing the money, because you'll really enjoy your work a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
What advice do you have for individuals who are just now either graduating from Code Kentucky or finishing another boot camp like program in order to help them get out and get that first job?
Like Lydia said, networking. I don't network. That's a weakness of mine. It's just a personal thing. I'm not a go out and talk to people person, but I know people network and they are doing better than me. So it definitely helps. But as far as advice, so my job I have now, if I were to compare my resume to the job description, I don't match it. By the time I was just applying to anything, not anything outrageous, but anything that I thought I could do, like any kind of junior, like I'm a systems analyst now. I was applying to junior web developers for Python, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, really anything I could find. So it's one of those things to where you might not match exactly what they want. But if you think you can do it, like my company's taught me so much. Like they expect you to not know stuff, especially some companies. So I guess the overall, I'm rambling a little bit. The overall takeaway is to, I guess sometimes you got to settle. I think people, they see the tech field, they see these boot camp advertisements where a boot camp graduate makes 120,000 a year, but it's not automatic like that. You got to work your way up. Like I said before, I could easily go over to Cincinnati and make double the money, but there's pros and cons to that. And I think people kind of want it really fast and they don't think about it. So many people chase these high-paying jobs and they never apply for anything that's under 40K or even in like a 40 to 60K range. And I think those are where people mess up. So it's really to know your value. You don't want to degrade yourself, but you want to be realistic with what you can do and start this job over like any other job. It's great to see that you can make 6 figures plus, but most people start, especially if you don't have a degree. Like that was a big struggle for me. I didn't have my degree. So it's, no experience and no degree. So, I took what I could get and I'm very happy that I took this step because I know from what I'm learning here, coupled with my degree, I could easily get a very high paying job afterwards, but it's just kind of putting in your dues until then.
Thank you so much. That's a really great answer. Very meaningful. I appreciate it. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the group that we have not covered?
I've got one. So what you said about not being necessarily, so believe it or not, I am not an extrovert. I am definitely an introvert. I just happen to have a mother who's never met a stranger and made me talk to people all the time because she determined I was not going to be like my dad at the library literally all the time and not talking to humans. So, but I mean, I do have to pump myself up to do it. And I would say it's awkward at first to go out networking, especially because people are going to go, well, why are you out? Because most people network once they're looking, which is not number one. Don't wait until you're looking. Don't do what I did because it's just a high pressure situation. And then you're just, I don't know, you're either so pressured that you don't say anything, or you're like me, where you're feeling so pressured and people are like, ooh, okay. So we see you, we know you're here. I would say, but know what you're going for. If people ask why you're out, just like, I just want to see what's out there, or if you're thinking about leaving, or like, are you thinking about leaving? It might be time. Everybody knows what that means, and they will leave it at that. They're like, yeah, when it's time. But I will tell you, they are crawling with recruiters. I mean, most of the recruiters I have were from networking events. So I would say totally go out there and do that and post stuff on LinkedIn about stuff that you like. I've opened my LinkedIn up where people can connect to me. That has had some interesting impacts. It's none one of those women things where I'm like, dude, it's not, this isn't, match, stop. But other than that, it's a good idea because you just never know, and you get to see, put your stuff out there like, hey, I learned how to do blah, 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 blah. And you kind of find your tribe, right? You've got groups, or you can go out to meet up and you can do those things. So I waited way too long to network, and I'll be honest with you, I thought my career was over, and I was like, that is never going to happen to me again. So that's why I'm like proselytizing a little bit about networking, because that is really how you get the jobs. It is just having that good network and that reputation.
How has that changed during COVID? I know that being isolated has sort of played to the worst instincts of us introverts. Are you able to get back out there, or are you doing most of your interactions virtually?
It's going to happen soon. I'm going to go out of the house and go to a networking event. I haven't, honestly. A lot of and I don't know that I want all of them to go around. I don't know. Oh, I'll answer that question too in a minute. I don't know if I want to totally go away from the virtual, because I like expanding my network beyond Cincinnati. right? So I've been on events where it's people in New York. I'd like to have a good balance, but it's so hard because you're in your sweats and your t-shirt and you have to go out and look like a professional human being. And I'm like, I don't look like a professional human being. But I've told myself, like, you've got to do something once a month. But, you know, I didn't really have to by the time COVID came around. I had basically killed myself, which I do not recommend, by the way. I mean, if there was an event, I was there. And it was a lot. So it was not healthy. So don't do that, please. Once a month, I think, is a plenty. Maybe twice is good. That's a good thing, especially if it's targeted. So I am not, Jinya, I hope I'm saying that correctly. I'm not a developer. I am a systems and network administrator by trade. And then I'm parading as a project manager right now, but we'll see how long that lasts. I'm kind of itching to get back into some systems work. I'm kind of looking at ServiceNow. I am looking at ServiceNow development. I've taken some development classes, but my team was networking, so I kind of did the lazy girl thing and stayed with my team, and that was networking. How do you find that?
And before we open it up to the rest of the questions, is there anything else that you would like to share with the group that we have not already covered? Okay. Dimitri, would you like to take this question? How do you find networking events that are specific to tech?
That might be a better question for Lydia, because I don't go to networking events.
Meetups. I do meetups. I go on LinkedIn. I mean, Google, I don't know, Python groups in your zip code or in this area, you know, stuff like that. I would check for professional trainings like Max Training, I believe, up here. Oh, that's cool. You can check Slack apparently. But you know, yeah, I do meetups and I Google, basically, is just what I do. And then I've got a few things where at this point I'm slimming it down. So like there's some programs I've gone through Greater Cincinnati Chamber, and they've got an alumni. There's the PMI. I've gone through those. I mean, honestly, go to the PMI. They're very talkative and bossy people. You won't even have to carry the conversation. So if you go to your local PMI chapter and find out what stuff is out there, you'd be surprised. So yeah, that's what I do.
Tell them what PMI is, just in case they don't know.
Oh, Project Management Institute. So everyone has a local chapter. This is SWO, which cracks me up, but it's Southwest Ohio. But it sounds like someone who really worked out. So anyway, but Southwest Ohio chapter for PMI. But if you go to the PMI.org, I think it's a .org. But if you just look up Project PMI, it'll be up there, and then you can see different different things that you can do out there. And I think everybody needs to have some project management stuff anyway. That way you can, you know, I work hard at knowing the technology that my guys are working on, even though I don't try to engineer for them because that's not my place, right? But I want to have an intelligent conversation with them. And I get my tech porn that way anyway, which I don't get as much anymore now that I'm a project manager. Same deal with you guys. I mean, you're going to work with PMs, and so it's diametrically opposed what we do, right? I'm driving deadlines in my current role, and you know, tinker's going to tinker. So, you know, you want all this time to kind of play around with stuff, and meanwhile the PM is like, no, we got the deadline. So if you find that common ground, it helps.
Hey Lydia, question. So as a PM, can you give some opinions on Scrum and Lean Six Sigma?
So Six Sigma, I haven't had as much experience with. I do like, though, that concept of continuous improvement. You need to check that stuff and see what's going on. So I'm actually PMing a pilot right now, which is interesting for something I kind of know about, but kind of also don't because it's new. I would say that Agile is great in a software development thing. It is the sexy word in project management. And so now people are trying to do Agile and Scrum and all this stuff in an Agile methodology versus waterfall in infrastructure. I I'm biased. I don't think that works very well. I think hybrid is the best you're going to do, because if you're going to put a package together for a piece of software, you're like, no, I didn't make this release. If I'm doing an update and the switch doesn't get there, we're not doing the upgrade. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a very different thing. I can see breaking the work up in a Scrum way, but I would say Agile works preferably in a software environment. And I think, and honestly, right, because that's who it was made for, was in development. And then everyone's like, ooh, that's fancy. And then they all try to adopt it, whether it works or not. So.
Okay. Do any of our guests have any questions that they'd like to put in chat?
I see a few offhand, some of the types of things.
I see one here about resumes. Let's circle back to resumes real quick. When you're putting your achievements together on your resume, do you shorten to bullet points? Do you use action statements to either Lydia or Dimitri? How do you prefer to organize your skills?
So what they did for me was they put a table up at the top, and I don't care. I don't really have any secrets here. They put a table up at the top that showed the different things I had done, right? And they make you do this god awful brain dump. It's horrible, but you know, that'll inspire you to keep your resume updated. So, and then what they did was they said that I was, and when I say they said that, I actually am, but they said, you know, that I was like an operations and networking professional, which is a big difference than just saying, oh, I'm a network person, because it kind of widened the appeal for bringing me on. If Word would cooperate, I would show you what I got, because like I said, it's just basically what's already on my LinkedIn. So that's how they did it. There were a lot of rules that I thought you had to keep with that you actually don't, apparently, like one page and all of this stuff. So they didn't have me do any of that. And then of course your reference sheets. So yeah, project and operations professional. That's what they said I was. It sounded good. But there, you know, it's stuff that the bots are looking for, because nobody is looking at all this stuff. And that's the hard part, is that you're not just handing your resume to someone anymore. I don't do cover letters. I've seen some people that want cover letters, and I'm like, oh, it sounds like a place that's not for me. What is this, the 60s? I'm not doing a cover letter. So, you know, but it just depends. Here we go. Can I share my screen? Is it okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is what they did. It finally cooperated with me. Let's make sure. There we go. Oh my God. Yes, I want to share. Okay. So see, they put like a table up here with the different things I had done. And then this was just the format that free game. I just copy and paste when I need to add a new one up here. This isn't my most recent one. And then they just went through all of that and did it that way. And then, you know, the one that I was most concerned with was this job, because I had a lot of different positions at KnowledgeWorks. And so they just basically, and you can see where they kind of said, okay, because this was technology services engineer level 2. No one knew what the heck that was. And if you're going from a nonprofit to a for-profit, nonprofits like really cute titles that mean nothing in for-profit world a lot of times. So you'll see where I'm like, okay, I was really a project manager equivalent at this point, or I was a project coordinator equivalent. And so that was what wound up happening. But yeah, they do it. I mean, I like the format. It works pretty well for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was incredibly useful. One question on how you present things through your resume, circling back to KnowledgeWorks actually, and all of the layoffs that we both sort of lived through for a while. How do you note something like that on your resume if there was, say, a layoff or you were separated from your employment for some reason?
So I will tell you, I was fortunate that I only had something happen one time. I was out for a month, I'm not even gonna get started on it, but basically it was January, it was like the end of December, and then January I wasn't, on there. I was a contractor, so that makes it a little bit easier to cheat. I will tell you though, another free game. If you don't have an LLC, get one. Get an LLC. You don't even have to call it anything fancy. Like in Ohio, it's 99 bucks, and then you can kind of use that and you can freelance a little bit through that, right? If there's a software or an application that you use a lot, like mine was Smartsheet and Zendesk, and contract work can be kind of flaky. So when I wasn't sure what kind of job I could get, during that month, January is a very tough time. Holiday season until about the end of January is a tough time to look for a job because, everybody's kind of on the holiday high and coming down from the holiday high. So then, partner up, a lot like Microsoft. I'm a Microsoft partner. I haven't done anything with it, but I'm a registered partner. Smartsheets partner, Zendesk partner. So if there's certain things that you already know that you use, see if they have a partnership. A lot of the cloud-based things have that now. And then LinkedIn actually now has where you can explain the gap in your resume. And a big sign of our times, one of them is caregiving. So some people have had to leave work for caregiving, not just because of, even COVID, but just because of we're all living longer, which is awesome, but we're living longer, which means we're getting more stuff along the way. But, you can kind of note it, due to layoffs or whatever, but I've been fortunate. I haven't had to deal with that one.
Dimitri, would you like to share anything about what it's like to be able to present that project work and how you do that in sequence or how you explain gaps?
Yeah, so gaps is one of my weaknesses on my resume. Just because when I was contracting, you kind of hop around. And like I said before, I had that Kuwait incident. Immediately following, I had an incident in Afghanistan. Well, I didn't even make it over there due to the recruiter, but I waited 6 weeks for a job that I never made it to. So it is hard to explain that. I don't use LinkedIn often, but Lydia mentioned how you can explain it, so I'll definitely look into that. When I did my resume, when I did my interview at my current job, they asked me about it and I was able to explain it. I think if you have pretty good reasons, like for example, was supposed to go after Afghanistan, I had a job lined up to go to Australia and I was doing things in the States to prepare for that job, but then they started having the forest fires over there and of course COVID. So I ended up resigning just because it kept getting so elongated that I just never made it over there and needed to get income. So I think if you have good reasons, and then like Lydia said, I think if the LLC would be a good idea because you can actively work for contracting and at the very least, you can say that you were freelancing during that time.
Thank you. That's very helpful to get your perspective on it. Again, Lydia and Dimitri, I appreciate you so much taking the time to be with us tonight and to answer our questions. Thank you everyone so much for showing up tonight and for participating and for sending in questions. If you send in questions, we are right at time. So if we did not get to your question or if this panel has sparked more questions, we encourage you to contact your mentors during your weekly meetups. This is all certainly things that you can discuss with them. And also August will be hosting a job readiness workshops in late June, which will also cover a number of these topics as well. So thank you so much from Code Kentucky. This has been the Developers Panel for May 23rd, 2022.